Hello, 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 hello. It's episode 265 from Pixels to Playtime. My name is Steven. I'm joined by my friends Paul and Rob. Hello, Paul and Rob.
Hallo Steven en Rob. Hoe gaat het van evening?
Oh, it's so
Good
lekker.
everyone. It's very nice to see you all today. It is Robert, and I'm here talking to you from Cape Town, South Africa.
We are extra special South African tonight because guess what? The world champions of rugby, the Springboks, have defeated the Wallabies in Australia for the first time in 9 years. It's worth celebrating. The scoreline was 24-8.
Oh,
Lekker. I
those
like the
losers.
Nou, just like.
Sounds like
Did
you
you-
my
celebrated
voice-
a lot.
My voice isn't like that because I've been screaming the national anthem at the top of my lungs.
I thought
It's
so.
because I went to a toy fair last weekend and came away with very few toys, but a case of the flu.
Oh, and a whole bunch of people that you cucked out.
Oh,
Clearly.
Clearly.
Were you cross with a lot of people? Were you shouting at everybody?
No. Just, I mean, look, the pandemic has made us all very aware of like our personal space and stuff. Like, I just don't get exposure to all the other bugs and viruses anymore. So yeah, it was an absolute petri dish. Kim walked onto the convention floor, the toy fair floor, for like
Concrete.
approximately 3 seconds with Elliot
Yeah.
before realizing, no ways. We're gonna play outside rather. So I walked this floor. Look, guys, it was a pretty cool toy fair.
nice.
And we can
Wow.
get into that perhaps at the back end of the show when we get into our
Nice.
new shit section.
You said back
But
end.
yeah, look, I don't think it's Rona.
My Corona.
Sharing a household with Kim Jabba MD means that I get ratted a lot. Like the amount of times I've been violated with a bloody cotton swab in my nostril. No fun, man. Swabbing my brains out. So yeah, we've declined to do it this time. Ignorance is bliss, because if I have COVID, means she can't go to work, means, ain't no bread on the table. So yeah, you'll just have to endure me and my very, very broken voice. Oh, I pity you guys.
I'm very
and the
glad
listeners.
that you. I'm very glad that you don't live with Doogie Howser,
Hell yeah.
because then you might be exposed to some very crazy sicknesses.
Exactly.
If you guys
And he
have
was
ever
a
watched
child.
an episode of that show.
What a crazy boy. But
Yeah.
how are you doing, Paul? How's your week been?
Okay, so
Oh
my
wow.
week's been
That was
crazy. That was quite a sigh.
that sums it up.
Yo. No, guys, it's been busy. I mean, this one just had a special spicy busy flavor because we received new stock for Gunplay SA, and we're prepping for, because I can finally say it now, SA Comic Con or Comic Con Africa, which is actually the
Yeah.
correct thing. So we also got in. We had to do a whole bunch of social media activations and stuff and briefings and all kinds of mad stuff. And then today, as part of all of that, we did and this is actually really cool. It's just super tired from everything from the week, but we do these things called a build meet, where a whole bunch of guys come together and we all like sit and talk shit and build Gundam kits and whatever.
Whoa.
And we did the first official one today, and there was like a huge Magic the Gathering launch that happened upstairs today at the venue, and it's like I was at a convention today. That's how I feel. So I'm
My goodness.
feeling a little hammered, my guys.
I hope you don't get sick. But it sounds like we were all busy today. So my comic book shop was celebrating a huge anniversary. So I was also surrounded by
The 30th.
a throng of people. 30 years they've been open. And
Been open for
I
30 years.
realized today that I've worked for them this year in December for 10 years. So I've
My
been
God.
working for them for a third of that time, but shopping with them probably for 7 years in total, I think.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's wild. Well, hopefully, I hope Stephen is the only one who gets sick. Paul, stay safe. Robert, stay safe. I will. Thank you, Robert.
Dude, I'm actually exposed to because I mean I take the kids in the morning. That's how my Saturday starts off. Is I take the kids for kung fu in the morning, and they come with all kinds of
So you're constantly
fun-
exposed to stuff.
So I mean, I've had a bit of a a bit of a lurgy here and there, but I've been
But
strong for the
thankfully,
most part.
nothing too
You know,
bad. But
nothing too
talking about
bad.
exposure, where's the
Ooh,
topic tonight? Um,
I thought
exposure.
you'd
so
never ask.
Playing with the Joes in the nude.
Well, guys, our, I suppose, generation of GI Joe fans were heavily influenced by video games.
Mm.
And I wanted to have the three of us discuss our key influences. For me, they're going to be the very earliest, like Nintendo 8-bit influences to my playtimes. But, if you guys want to go wild and get into the 3D era, the PlayStation era, and beyond, go for it. But yeah, I think platforming had a huge to do with the way I played with my action figures, particularly the Ninja action figures. So we're going to talk a little bit about pixels to playtime, boys.
Yeah.
Pixels to playtimes.
And if you're listening to this podcast on your podcatchers or watching the YouTube version, jump down in the YouTube comment section and let us know what your key influences were. Because in many respects, like video gaming, video gaming, this is going to be tough. You guys might have to pick up the slack, and I'll
Video
tag you in.
gaming
But
was a huge influence. No, for sure. I mean, video games was just coming out. Even if you didn't own the latest consoles, there were lots of bootleg systems out there. And I had a lot of access to many of the NES games and I suppose the Sega games off bootleg.
Yeah,
Like the bootleg systems everywhere. And
everywhere you
so
look,
instead of
knockoff
getting one game
stuff.
on your cartridge, you got like well, they claim
120,
999,
72,
127,
15.
800 games, and basically it was like 12 games, but like part 1 and part 2, and it was repeated over and over again. Yeah, so we're definitely we had access to dozens of games for very little money, and
well, I think it
they
had
were
a lot to do
definitely
with the fact that like we were second generation gamers getting into the first generation stuff. So,
Yeah,
but what I mean by that was like when we got cartridges, there were already the Chinese knockoffs of stuff that happened a decade earlier, like
exactly.
in Japan and the United States. So, like getting one cartridge that had 150 games in one, that was quite a common thing for us. So we were spoiled for choice, but there were all the kind of rudimentary like Pooyan and Binary World and Arctic Adventure.
And
But
Devil World.
amongst those like rather banal games was something that I found very, very atmospheric.
Ghosts
And
and
it had a
Goblins.
very evocative name. No, no. I don't know. Did you find on those 150 in ones, did you find anything called Cage?
Kage.
Kage?
Yeah,
Well,
that's it. That's how you pronounce it. It's shadow in
Oh,
Japanese.
really?
Kage. Yeah,
Interesting.
Legend of the Kage.
Legend of
Legend
Cage.
of the Shadow. Well, Legend of
I
Cage,
didn't. Actually, no, I do
this
recognize this, but I don't think I played it much.
it was a ninja platformer.
So
It
cool,
was
this game.
very atmospheric. It had this forest setting where you were jumping from treetop to treetop and falling in a very floaty fashion, while in the background you had flashes of lightning,
Yeah, it's
ninjas
a game
descending
tradu.
from trees. You were throwing shuriken and wagging this very sharp, well, it was a white pixelated stick or two, but I suppose there were wakizashi and
Yeah, that's exactly what they were. Nice, dude.
well, dude, this gave us insight into how we could play with our Ninja Force action figures. Storm Shadow, Quick Kick, all of them, the exciting martial artists in the G.I. Joe toy line. This is how you did it. And what I realize now, after the fact, with hindsight, is that this was a platformer interpretation of like Hong Kong wire work chop socky films. Just the way the characters moved and sort of floated through the air had that wire work, almost flying physics to it, which totally informed the way I would play with my action figures. It was so much more exciting for them to have this enormous hang time and be able to do combat in mid-air, it seemed. They weren't flying. They weren't imbued with superpowers. They were just short of that. And yet they were so much more potent as fighters than the typical like ground-based, gun-wielding, green-shirted GI Joe figure. So it
Yeah,
set
I
the
think I
ninjas
can
apart.
definitely see the ninja influence in the game. I mean, the movement is very fluid, I think, and the way that they do jump around and move in the game is very, yeah, it's very. I want to say poetic, but I suppose balletic
I like that word
would be
as
would
a
be
poetic,
more than
balletic.
poetic. Balletic,
That's
yeah, it's kind of very fluid movement, and they do move around a lot more than say, yeah, a normal soldier would. And hello, good evening to everyone in the chats. If you're
yeah,
joining us
guys.
live in the Joburg Force. A special shout out to Chasing 80s Toys, who's going for dinner soon. I hope you have a good dinner. Zantara is here with us. Bob Squad.
Mark van Leeuwen.
Mark van Leeuwen, Matthew Comstock, as always. Apparently, Bob is very upset that we're not actually going to be playing nude with our toys, but maybe next episode.
Oh, I might be
Hey,
naked.
who's to
It's
say
very
I'm
hot
Kaz
not
is
here.
here
naked right
too.
now?
If we don't know, I mean, you sound very sick, so you must be naked.
Bye, Vladimir.
Just to double check, you guys did get my screen share, right?
Yes, indeed, we did. For
Of the
people
cool
watching
video
on
of the Legend of
YouTube,
the Kage going down.
we got to
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
Legend
man.
of the Cage, which is in fact not the 1988 movie Cage, starring Lou Ferrigno and Reb Brown, which I have not seen. Zantara, you're gonna have to tell me more about this.
So
So that's my first influence to the way I used to play, guys. How about
very
you?
nice.
Paul, you want to
I
crack one open?
Paul
I'm
is
gonna
gonna
crack one
get it
open.
with
So Legend of
real
the Kage is definitely one of those games that like was quite influential for me as well when I was quite young. It was one of the cooler games on those multi-carts. This is something that I played quite a lot when I was younger. Most notable, I actually played this more on a console called the TurboGrafx 16. The Japanese version I played on was known as the PC Engine, and it is what I used to call then Ninja Gaiden.
Now you see, you're
Ninja-
totally fancy, because we never had anything this cool on our 150s in ones.
Yeah.
We were so
Never.
lucky. Okay, I was so lucky in that I was positioned in the right place because Northgate had just opened. It was like a new mall, and my prior to Northgate opening, my parents had got me my first NES. I just turned 6. And oh, actually no, I lie. I turned 6, and my first games were like Ghosts and Goblins and Tiger Heli, and then I got something else called B Wings and Excite Bike later, and then, and then I like played a few odd games here and there that like came through to the house that people brought and whatever's, but this game was there because they had opened a really awesome game shop inside Northgate, and they had only the finest knockoff NES games or Famicom games if you prefer there. So we had lots of cool stuff to choose from. However, this particular title came into my life because David had moved across the road, as many of you guys know, as you've heard me say on multiple episodes. And yeah, he had Ninja Gaiden, which is what it's actually called. And I loved the crap out of this game. And because you could jump off walls, you could like hook onto walls, and it had a great soundtrack, and you fought against things like football players and soldiers and like bugs and that fucking bird. And it was great. It was like such a major influence in my GI Joe play because I used to run around with my GI Joes and make them do all kinds of ninja flips and stuff, regardless whether they were ninjas or not. And I had this pre-ninja force, so yeah, my dudes were flipping and they were hooking on the walls, and I would have them like I used to, and I still do it. I still like to try to get my guys to like hook on something and hold a machine gun, or a sword or something, and that's all thanks to Ninja Gaiden. Because how cool is it that you could just stick like a knife in a GI Joe's hand? Oh God, I know. I've just realized who I'm talking to. Steve did this amazing video, guys, and if you haven't joined the YouTube subscription service or whatever YouTube membership, Steve does these cool little vlogs, and yeah, there's one that you did quite recently, dude, or two that you've done recently that are very much like how I used to play with my GI Joes as a kid. Because I was by myself a lot, so I'd also run around the house going, whoosh, 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 killing invisible things every now and then, throwing up something for them to cut, take that Ninja Turtle. It was good times. And also,
Preaching
this
to the
game is tough as balls.
Reaching to the converted.
This game is tough as nuts, man. My god. Ninja Gaiden, guys, if you want a really cool, challenging game that's actually very well balanced, very fair, play Ninja Gaiden. But I think that was me also trying to play the game when I couldn't play the game. Because, I'm sure you guys had the same challenge when you were kids. Dad wants to watch the rugby, so you can't play games. Because that's the only TV in the house. So, Mom wants to watch her stories. So when I couldn't play this game, I was playing this game all over the house. And this is one of the games that's influenced me. But I'm gonna save the next one for after we go around the table. So Robbie, what games inspired your play, my guy?
Paul, which action figure was your Ninja Gaiden stand-in?
I used to love my Snake Eyes, my black Snake Eyes, because that's all I had. The 88 version.
89.
89, keep doing that. The 89 Snake Eyes, he was great for that. Another figure that was good for that was literally anybody with a helmet was a ninja for me, man. Anybody who had a helmet or you couldn't see their face, they were ninjas. Flak Vipers, ninjas. Incinerators, ninjas. Whatever's. In this case, I don't know if I used an incinerator then because it was before Ninja Force. So I had like a Target, man. Like Target. Yeah, if you couldn't see their faces, they were ninjas. That's just how it worked. They were either ninjas or robots. So that's how that used to go down for me.
Man, I can do Target to Ninja in like 2 steps. Because Target was repurposed as Street Hawk in India. And
Yes.
ninjas love motorcycles. So there you go. Motorcycle Ninja.
Absolutely. All of them sit on their motorcycles, don't they?
The Kawasaki
Robbie.
Ninja.
Your turn. brother.
Okay, so my ones are kind of like very, I suppose, tangential. Because I don't think there were any games, at least before I met Steven, because I think there were a lot of games after I met Steven on these systems that I played. So it's more tangential in like the concepts more than it was the actual like gameplay. So the main one, or one that I'll mention, is one called Battle City, which was a tank game.
Yeah.
I've never seen the box art before because obviously this is all inside one single game system.
Yeah.
But it's evocative. I mean, it's amazing how much they could suggest from the cover art for these games. With a guy kind of sitting on the tank and he's bashing through a wall, and it's like, this is definitely the gameplay.
So Namco.
It's definitely not the gameplay. It looks absolutely nothing like the game that you would be playing, in which you would control a tank and you have to guard essentially your bird or phoenix base.
Yeah, your bird. Yeah, that's exactly what we called it, the bird.
The bird from enemy tank attacks. And there's various terrain, there's destroyable walls in the game. And depending on the tanks that you're fighting, you would get power-ups, which allow you to destroy them easier, or to create like cool like brick wall around, or not a brick, like a steel wall around your base temporarily, for you to shoot better. So there are many power-ups in the game. And I think what this kind of taught me more than anything else was more like the concept of tactics, and having you have these waves of enemies coming down at you, and having to deal with different types of terrain. And I mean, there was also like bushes where the tanks were just foliage, where they would like kind of like hide behind you. You wouldn't know exactly where they were. And I think it's more like the idea of like, how do you navigate these zones than anything else. So I think that's why I'm like, it's more tangential. So I don't have like games that directly, I think, influence early gameplay of mine, or at least like toy play. It's more like very tangential, where it's kind of like the concept of tactics or strategy. Creating your own passageways to get behind the tanks, making sure they can't get to you, when to use the power-ups. But it was one of the games I played an absolute ton on the early system that I had.
And on the multiple cards, they always called it tank.
Yeah, it was called tank or super tank, I believe.
Or super tank, yeah.
probably
also,
one of those rip-offs.
And for the listeners, just so that you, just to put you guys in perspective as well, these knockoff games, they were very careful with stepping around licenses and things. So a lot of the times when you saw the title screen, you would very seldom get the actual name of the game in the title screen. It would just say player 1, player 2.
Yeah, player
That
1,
was
player 2.
it.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that's even just seeing. I mean, Battlesuits on the screenshots I found, that is not something you would see.
Yeah.
They would obviously they get rid of that to just be player 1, player 2. That's why they could fill it up with 100 games, because essentially just 7 or 8 or 9 of the same game over and over again.
Yeah,
But this was
with
definitely one of the
different
ones
like
that kind
hacks sometimes.
of that kind of like got me into like the idea of tanks and like
a tank that shoots
and
ninjas.
vehicle play, and just the idea of how the terrain kind of affected things differently, and playing inside an area was more interesting than playing outside, I guess. So it's more of a tangential thing than is a direct influence on how I played gaming. I think definitely my second one, which is a game that I picked up before meeting Steven, because Steven, unfortunately, I met him so young that basically everything I ever played from then, I mean, we probably shared it all. Or at least I played a lot of games that I think influenced a lot more. But these are definitely ones that influenced me before meeting Steven. But Steven, what's another game that got your juices flowing?
Well, I'm glad you cracked open the top-down vehicle-based gaming with Tank or Battle City, because I want to talk a little bit about, firstly, a little game called Jackal. Now, Jackal was, I mean, it's absolutely a dead ringer for GI Joe. It's 2 vamps, a green one and a tan one, rampaging through this varied kind of war zones, just laying waste to everything, rescuing hostages, heading to an LZ and getting them picked up by a helicopter. You had plenty of firepower, machine guns, grenades, rocket launchers. Like, if you had a GI Joe vehicle at all, this was how you were supposed to play with them. Because this essentially is the way you would view your toy. You'd be standing or kneeling above the vehicle, manipulating it over the landscape, and these are the types of activities you could be involved in. Taking out an enemy base, rescuing hostages, getting them to safety, taking on massive odds, like big bosses, a David and Goliath situation where your little Jeep has to destroy massive tanks. But this actually isn't the game that I wanted to show focus on, because it was preceded by another game called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Whoa. Oh, yes. I'm actually very curious to see which turtles.
The first one, of course.
The very first ever.
Oh no, not that one.
That's why I'm curious, because I know some people. Oh, wow, look, Bionic Commando.
Shush. That's not supposed to be there.
Different people.
It's coming mixed.
Because of the nature of knockoffs in this country, a lot of people don't refer to. Okay, so you actually have the first one, because a lot of guys in this country get confused about the first one, thinking that the first one's the beat 'em up.
Well, this was the one that was on like the 23-in-1s and stuff.
Wow, yeah.
So this was the one that was
nice.
absolutely commonplace. Yeah, well, my friend had the best.
Cape Town.
Like, there were 150 games and no repeats. That was ridiculous.
Those
incredible.
Were the best ones to be able to get.
So this was buried in there somewhere. And when we discovered it, we were like, what? This is the Ninja Turtles? This is amazing. An actual, like, toy and cartoon franchise in a video game. Like, this is not some Hong Kong bullshit. This is a real thing. But what was so significant about this game was it had multiple modes of play. So what I'm showing in the YouTube version right now is you are driving the turtle wagon around a top-down landscape. And then you'd go into buildings and you'd switch to a platformer. So this gave you an idea of how you could integrate not only vehicles of the GI Joe line, but other lines too, like Micro Machines, Hot Wheels.
Ooh, I'm so glad you mentioned Micro Machines. Yeah.
Ring Raiders, any kind of multi-scale play. was this is the game that gave you license to do that. You could switch out from being now. Don't forget that we had a couple of Transformers at that stage. They had very cool alt modes, but if you didn't want to play a dedicated
Shit game.
Transformers game and you wanted to shut up about the game, we don't want to talk about that. But if you wanted to play with your action figures and have them jump into a cool jet, well, you need look any further than your Transformers collection. So a game like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, with its multi-mode kind of gameplay, as I say, gave you the license to do that in your gaming. All of a sudden, these various avenues of playing, where you'd switch from a zoomed-out jet battle with your Ring Raiders to then all of a sudden bailing out and being your ace action figure on the ground.
I'm so
All of a
glad you
sudden
did
that
that too,
became-
dude.
Yeah, dude, we did it plenty.
Yeah,
In fact,
I'm so glad.
one of these
yeah.
days, Rob and I are going to burden the listenership by talking about Rojo Gundam. We called it that. Rojo Gundam. And guess which 3 toy lines were integrated in that? 3 distinct scales. But, oh, so much fun.
Wow.
Anyway, that's about as much as I'm going to murder your ears with my croaky voice for now.
Well, dude, it's cool that you mentioned that because the game I also was very heavily inspired by is also Jackal, and I used to do exactly what you did because I didn't have any Joe vehicles save for the Warthog, and so I had to pretend that I had GI Joe Jeeps, but I did have a cool little army Jeep from the Micro Machines line. So I used to do exactly this. I'd zoom down to like this like little Jeep and I'd like roll around and pretend I was driving over dudes and shooting guys and whatever's out of the Jeep, and then, you know, when my guys got out, then I'd zoom back into the figures and then, like, you know, shooting each other. And that would follow either one of these types of play styles. So especially if I wasn't going into like the whole running around ninja thing, I would invoke a little bit of Contra. And yeah, my guys would be like, just, you know, I'd just pop up dudes and they'd be like pop up targets, and my guys would be like, you know, that kind of thing. And then to jump back in the Jeep and go and drive like around one of my Micro Machines mini cities or some crap, and then like start up shit somewhere else in a new neighborhood. Oh, good times, man. Like totally did all of that stuff that you mentioned as well. And just to like add a little bit of a laugh as well, and I've said this to be before, but there are some new members of the Berg Force who might appreciate this. Once again, knockoff cartridges for the NES were a very special treasure because a lot of the times we got the Japanese cover art because these games were knockoffs of the Famicom games, so we very seldom got the English version of the Ninja Turtles, etc., etc. And Jackal on mine, because they're trying to avoid the copyright, they had completely like drawn over the name Jackal on the cartridge, Japanese cover art, but on the silver piece of tape on the top of the game, it was called Gulf War. So this game, I knew it as Gulf War because when you start the game, they even went into the code and just completely removed Konami and the name Jackal, so you just got those 3 stripes that you get from the Jackal title screen. And so I used to play Gulf War, so that in itself like was very inspirational. That was like,
look, the 3 stripes is so iconic because, I mean, any Joe fan knows those 3 stripes.
Exactly, man. And I used to have this whole, when I was a kid, I had this whole conspiracy theory that this was maybe a GI Joe game. And obviously we had no internet for me to be able to confirm this. So I also got David in on this because David was also like, "Yo, this is probably a GI Joe Jeep game or some shit." And like,
Well, they do those character biogs in the front of Jackal, and it's like,
yeah,
absolutely, it's Tunnel Rat, and it's probably Beachhead, or I don't know, Zap. You know, those guys are so vividly drawn. But it's, you know, it's the usual suspects. I suppose you could draw analogs between that and the Howling Commandos, or Sergeant Rock and Easy Company, that sort of thing. Sergeant Savage and the whatever his guys were called, the Screaming Eagles.
yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Hey, with the old Skadonk World War II plane.
I might want to pick up that P-40 Warhawk.
No, it's a cool plane, man. I'm being a tool, but it's
Well,
being
it's
a
got a
cool plane.
gigantic Gatling gun extraneously hanging off the front end. But aside from that, yeah, it's nice. Nice to have a toyetic World War II era plane to play with. Because, your other alternatives are all those very realistic looking scale replicas, and it kind of sucks the fun out when it's the size of a table. Anyway, Rob, oh, it's a video game.
Yeah, so the second game that is also tangentially, because I didn't have access to a lot of games before meeting Steven. Is a game called Bomberman, which I actually knew absolutely nothing about. I don't even think it was called Bomberman. And in researching this now, for when I was trying to find pictures and stuff for this episode, I didn't even realize actually he's a robot and he's trying to escape from a factory that he's working at or something. And
Well,
that's a
something I wanted
surprise.
to talk
I just
about
thought
with
it was
Legend of Cage is like we got these games so abstractly. Like if we had them at their first release in the mid '80s, they would have come in a box. They would have come
With
with
a
an
manual.
exquisitely like designed and well written manual to just really hold the suspension and disbelief very highly.
completely sell it to you.
Like
Absolutely. I mean,
we
that's why
got
seeing
these
the cover art is incredible.
so blatantly.
Yeah,
Like none
you
of
had
that.
no idea. It's just you open the game and there it is. You're a ninja
Crude.
and you're running around fighting weirdly shaped animals, essentially. I think that's what I always thought they were. But apparently, these are actually the security guards in the factory that are trying to prevent Bomberman,
got
the
that he
robot,
was a
from
ninja?
escaping. I thought he was a ninja because
Looks
of
like some
the
kind
way
of
that he's
makes sense.
trained.
anime
too.
robot.
To me, he always looked like a ninja because of the kind of the covering below his eyes. We could see was the eyes. He kind of had like this cool like white and blue outfit that he wore. To me, he was a ninja. I don't know why he dropped bombs. He was called Bomberman. He was a ninja.
It's probably because he had the meanest thoughts, man.
Probably that's probably what it was. But with this game, I mean, with the previous game kind of was very vehicle based. This game was character based, and it definitely influenced my love of explosions, and kind of like chaining things together and just kind of like trying to escape from a place. And it was a lot of fun to play. I always remember trying to outsmart where these guys were going, try and blow up as many bad guys as possible. So I think this influenced a lot I suppose it's once again it's more of a tactical thing. It's like how do you get through this as fast as possible and as efficiently as possible? And just the explosions were fantastic. The way that the explosions interacted with the characters themselves, and the way that you could literally chain explosions together, like using different bombs, and you kind of like blow up as many guys as possible to see how quickly you can finish the game. But once again, a very esoteric and I suppose tangential connection to like actual gameplay. It's more like the influence of ideas, I think, more than it is actual gameplay that kind of like came in and was like, this is the way that you're going to be playing games. I think a lot of the games that influenced me more came a little bit later on, after meeting Steven and getting access to his many NES games, and the PC games as well. So there are definitely a few other ones that I think will feel more direct.
Look, we're not going to get into the Doom and
Oh,
Command and
no,
Conquer
for sure.
generations of gaming. This is the very rudimentary stuff, but like,
Yeah,
those
it
things
feels,
were
but it's like
pretty
influences
massive.
your young mind. And definitely 6, 7, 8, 9 years old me. These are what kind of like impacted me the most. I mean, there's a lot of other games, but I think these were the two main ones that kind of like I remember playing the most of and really having a great time with.
Matt Comstock in the Bergforce says Desert Strike is still a favorite. Absolutely. Bloody hell.
Desert Strike, what is there? Jungle Strike. That game was also a lot of fun. So
This Jungle
cool.
Strike.
Whoa.
Was that going to
Hell
be
yeah.
your next one?
It's one of them, definitely. This game, and this segues really nicely because Jungle Strike and Desert Strike for me changed my GI Joe missions from your mission is to just literally kill everybody to like go and save this person and go and drop off this here and go and pick this up there to
Low
take it somewhere
armor.
else and kill people
Pick
there.
up that box. It'll give you shield. Pick up that box. It'll give you. Yeah. Did you start having like a fuel shortage sort of play pattern?
Yes, I
Is
used to
that-
do that as well. Like, oh no, we're gonna go down, and then had to jump out and stuff. And the helicopter I used was some. I'm sure you guys had them as well. They did these really beautiful die-cast jets and helicopters at one stage that you could find at like all the stores. It was like CNA in particular, and I used to have this metal. I always wished it was an Apache, but it was a what is it? The one before the Apache. It's kind of I want to say it's the Tiger. The Tiger 2 or whatever it was. I can't remember now. Like, I'm sorry. Like, but
Look,
it
before
looks
the
like the Apache
Apache
is just
was
skinnier.
was
Yeah.
the Huey Cobra.
Yes, thank you. That's what it was. No, but it looked anyway. We
Are
got
you
it as
talking
a
about
micro machine
the
as well.
Comanche?
No,
which was
the Comanche came
experimental.
after the Apache, but came after inverted commas. But so I used to run around with that thing, and a Harrier, because I had a Harrier, one of those metal Harriers, and I mean it was too small. I mean, if I have to give it a scale, it'll probably be like close to 1:72 scale ish kind of size for the jets and the helicopters. And so that was also another way of like changing the scale, because at the time I didn't have any kind of GI Joe helicopter. It would be a while before the Locust came into my life, and then the Fang I would meet David with. So, no, I lie. David had the Fang, but when I was playing at home, I didn't have any GI Joe helicopters. So I'd use my metal ones, or my metal Harrier jet, and I would even sort of faux the angle, like try to, like sort of, instead of being behind the jet when I was like flying it around, or the helicopter, I'd sort of like be looking down at it from like what I would deem as the isometric angle, like, and then in my head, I don't know if you guys ever did this, but like I would try to use controls in my brain, like as in, stick forward for down, stick back for up, that kind of thing. Like I'd try to get my brain around that a little. So Jungle Strike was a very, very good kind of box of gameplay that also used to be a GI Joe thing. But then also, guys, the inverse also used to happen. I used to like imagine that this was GI Joe, and that I was the Joes flying a Comanche around or driving the hovercraft or whatever's in this game. And I did the same thing with Jackal as well, because I thought it was the GI Joes. Right? Yeah. And then sometimes I'd be like, even with Contra, like I would put the GI Joes over the Contra dudes, and there was a very cool knockoff cartridge, and I don't know if you guys ever got it. It was called GI Joe 5. Don't know if you remember GI Joe 5.
No.
I mean, not GI Joe 5, Contra 5. It was called
Contra
Contra
5.
5. Contra
Maybe?
5, and basically it was Contra, Bull and Lance, and they would replace the GI Joe sprites.
I
And
don't
would
remember
run
this at
around.
all.
And would run around like, basically it was just Contra 1, but it had been like mishmashed with pieces of the first GI Joe game. It was
That's
bizarre.
awesome.
I need to play
stupid.
this game.
I
That
would
sounds
have loved it. I would have still had it today if they had not broken into my house. Because I got GI Joe 5 because I was like, this is very weird.
Contra
Mom, buy it for me. Contra 5. And then there was also a GI Joe knockoff as well, which wasn't GI Joe at all. But I can't remember what the game was that it was meant to be. But it also, like, they just switched the sprites out. So it had like the Duke sprite. Is it the Duke sprite from the second GI Joe game? And he would replace some other character, and you would also run around and shoot stuff. I think it was very randomly Street Fighter 20 or Street Fighter 2000 or something like that, where they just switched out the dude with like Duke or something. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, crazy times.
Made in China.
Rob, have you
Hell
got
yeah.
any more game influences or that you want to
I
share
would
with
say, okay, the last one, which I think would probably be the most influential, or at least the most that kind of feels like a game, and it's a game that I played before Stephen introduced me to Streets of Rage, was Double Dragon. which
Oh,
I
so
think is
good.
very much in the vein of Streets of Rage, where basically it's a beat 'em up. You're running around, you're punching dudes in the face. It's very, very rudimentary. But I remember having a lot of fun playing the game, and it was cool because it was one of the few games that I wasn't playing that where it was kind of like a 3D or like a top down view. Finally, you were
Yes.
actually going, left to right. I mean, there's like Super Mario and stuff like that, but you're going left to right. You're beating up a bunch of people, and then you slowly, and that's how you progressed through the game itself. It's really straightforward concept, but I remember it being a lot of fun, and it just introduced like different items that you could use while you played the game, and it felt, I think, a lot more varied than say the other two games, and it felt more directly like what I would end up doing in games, beating people up and throwing them with things, and it is definitely a very early influence. And one of the games that was quite often on those bootleg cartridges was Double Dragon, and
Uh-huh.
I remember having a lot of fun with this one.
I like the
It's
second
just
one.
it's weird. I don't think I've ever
Love
played
Double
the second
Dragon.
one. I've only ever played the first one.
Double Dragon 2 is so good. Bimmy and Jimmy.
Like I think in the end, like if the games were too difficult, I didn't get very far with them. I wasn't the best of players when it came to like overcoming difficulty. So that's why I didn't I didn't play
It's a-
like a lot of Contra. Contra was tough. To me, it
I
was a
think
very,
I
very
saw
difficult game.
Alistair beat Double Dragon 2 once in my life, and it was
Oh,
spiritual. I was like, oh my word, you're actually going to complete a Nintendo game. Oh, incredible.
Yeah. Double
I think
Dragon 2
yeah,
was one of the
mainly my
first games to
experiences
finish.
were just playing games.
Cool.
It's just to pass time. There was no like I wasn't trying to finish games. I think finishing games came later with games where there was like a definite beginning, not beginning, middle, end, but there was kind of like, especially the later story-based games. Like on PlayStation, there was Metal Gear, there was Siphon Filter was another one, and earlier PlayStation ones, I think like Tomb Raider and stuff like that, where they started really introducing stories to kind of progress the gameplay, when it wasn't just about the arcade experience from the earlier games, where obviously it was just you're playing the game as much as the gameplay is designed to make you play it and play it and play it and lose fairly easily so that you can keep putting money into those machines. Sorry. But games made specifically for consoles, I think, often did have more story-based gameplay, and it was those later ones, I think, that influenced at least my penchant for like wanting to like be very I wanted to say stoic. I know that's not a word, but story based. Whenever I did end up making games, it was very wordy, I feel, more than it was entertaining.
Well, I'm like Double Dragon. Sorry, guys, because you're touching a lot on like my childhood here a lot with the video games. I
But
mean,
Rob,
obviously, that's
I'm
the
gonna
whole
call
point of the
bullshit on
episode.
you, dude. Like I think you played Double Dragon 2, man.
Do you think so?
I do not recall us having access to Double Dragon.
Maybe I did play Double Dragon 2. I really feel like it was Double Dragon though.
Double Dragon 2.
Mm.
Now there's I'll
The
give you a little bit
revenge.
of
They
a
don't actually look that
Yep.
different.
yes, they're very
Oh,
different.
yes.
Please.
And you can
And
play
I'll-
2-player co-op at the same time.
And yeah, a bit of trivia for you on that one. Most people in South Africa that I know played Double Dragon on a PC, because Double Dragon 1
Worst.
on NES was not something that you found here often or easily. So,
I've got the
most peop-
cartridge, the NES cartridge of Double Dragon 1, but I only ever
Wow.
played the co-op. I mean, not the co-op, the versus mode.
Yeah. Cheers, Double
it's
Dragon
it's
2.
always Steven who remembers things better than I remember them myself. Yes, actually, now that I'm looking at gameplay from the second game,
So I finished this game.
I recognized the gameplay from the first one. I'm sure I played it, but obviously it's very
There's
similar.
Serena. Go and beat up Serena. Oh,
Yes,
loser. You're
Serena.
supposed to
Okay,
hit
no,
them on
it was
off the
too.
ladder.
They look so similar though. It must have been
Something-
very small changes between the first and the second game.
Well, the main thing is 2-player co-op at the same time,
Yeah.
Yes.
which is great. And you could hurt each other.
Yes,
Amazing.
you can. That was always.
Or if you play B mode, yes.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh, there was a difference.
Yes. B mode is hard mode. Well, hard mode as in you can hit each other. If you play two-player A mode, you won't hurt each other. Guys, this is one of the first games I finished on this. A girl who used to live in my
Incredible.
neighborhood, her name was Laura.
Ooh.
Her and I used to play this two players, and we finished this playing two players, and we were all of like 7 years old when
Well,
we did it.
boo. Alistair feels
So-
so less special now. But Rob, tell us about
It
how
doesn't make
this
the game any
influenced
easier. It
the
was
way
tough.
you played. How did this influence the way you play with action figures, man?
I think it was like it felt like there was a story going on. Like the characters were moving through zones, through places, trying to get to a goal. More so than the other kind of like top down games where it was more like you knew you were in a stage. This felt like a world that you're in and that you're traversing. And I think
Because the very next stage takes place inside a helicopter,
yeah,
which is pretty rad. I think we oftentimes,
Boom.
yeah, we would then make a kind of a scene out of the transitionary vehicle. So if we got into a transport plane or a
you
transport
couldn't
helicopter,
you didn't have to
or a
get to the
tank.
place. You could do something before you got there as well.
We did a scene. Yeah, exactly. There could be a fight scene or just a discussion or just a bit of downtime, like where the characters reflected before the next part of the mission. And this Double Dragon game, I think, was the first to give us that idea.
Yeah, even
That
more so
notion.
than later games. Oh my goodness, it is the second one. I really thought it was the first
about-
one. Like I
No,
was
it's
looking
not
at the
about that.
gameplay and I was like, I'm sure it's this. But now looking at the second one,
Yep.
you see,
This game's got one
Stephen
of my
remembers
favorite
everything better
soundtracks
than I
on the
do.
NES.
He absolutely has a much better memory than I do.
So-
this is why I rely on him for everything.
I have
I
one
wanna
more,
put-
guys. And I
Oh,
wanted
cool.
to.
Ooh.
I wanted
Yeah, I've
to
got
let
two
it
more, but I
roll.
can roll them into one.
Oh my
Hey.
goodness. We'll round you out. But I dropped a hint. I tipped my hand earlier. So
For the YouTube watchers, you saw him.
and Paul blabbed. But Bionic
Hey.
Commando showed me a way to integrate characters with removable hands. You know, we were always fans of how Spider-Man could traverse levels with his web shooters, or Batman had grapple hook launchers. Well, if you had a Battle Android Trooper, or Overkill, or Bats version 2 from 1991, as I did, this was a way to have a very kinetic, exciting way of like grappling onto things by using that removable hand. And that was such a huge impetus or incentive for me to choose that character. And it was Bionic Commando and that cool way of like swinging from platform to platform. That was a really, really cool aspect. So yeah,
So-
Bionic Commando, loved that game.
It's actually
Absolutely
something
so
I only
much
played
fun.
much later on in my life, eh? I
Oh, for
never had
reals?
any exposure to it until I considered myself to be a quote-unquote gamer and was very much into going back and playing a lot of retro stuff. But Bionic Commando is very cool, and I can definitely see how it would translate into like GI Joe play. I mean, easily.
Or Cobra Play.
swinging.
Look, it was a lot of like science fiction-esque games which would allow me to use Overkill or the Battle Ender Trooper as antagonists and protagonists, because they were fairly minor players in the GI Joe world. But in a sort of a science fiction reimagining, all of a sudden they could be your mains, or they could be your key supporting characters, like your C-3PO to your Luke Skywalker could be Overkill, as it was in our game, which we loosely called the Renegades. I played as Cesspool, renamed him Scarface, and his second in command was Overkill. And Overkill would have these massive mid-air combats using his grapple hand, you know, giant robots from the 70s style, you know, shoot your fist off. Only this fist was connected via like a metallic cable, which would allow him to like zzz, you know, zoom up buildings and stuff like that. Very, very cool. Very enjoyable. I felt kind of sorry for the people I was playing with who didn't have characters who could do that. because all of their combat was very one-dimensional, and mine was like soaring through the skies, and like
Well,
theirs would
it
wrap
made
up
the entire
after
scene so much
seconds,
more
and I was
interesting.
still like flying through the air, and you guys were like still busy, or you guys were done already, and I was still chewing up minutes of playtime with my epic fight.
Well,
Shame.
it certainly allowed you to be a lot more creative, and I think we often finished quicker so that we could actually just watch you.
After all these years, I didn't need playmates. I needed an audience. And now, thanks to PlayMotion, that's exactly what I have. I have no playmates, and I have,
Huge audience.
well, a modest audience. Boo hoo 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 hoo. Dry my eyes on my view count.
We're going to be in the same city very soon. We definitely have to take some toys out and teach Elliot how to play with them.
Hell yes.
Oh yes.
So, I just want to show show the viewers on the YouTube version what was pretty much the console most of us had. This is a knockoff of a Famicom. This is actually a little bit nicer than a lot of the ones that you saw here.
Yeah, you could
locally.
actually put the cartridges onto the console. No, I didn't have something like this. Mine was like a big. It was
Like a
either
black thing that was
green
called, like, Golden
or
China or something.
yellow or some weird color.
Mm.
I know it was a very strange color, the console itself. But yeah, you would pop the things on the top. I remember that
Yeah,
much.
and that's right. And this you would, because this has got its little gray flap is down where the cartridge slot is to protect it from dust. But yeah, my first console, my first NES knockoff or Famicom knockoff looked like this pretty much. And yeah, Ghosts and Goblins was my first game. And so my parents, I suppose in some kind of need to control the video gaming thing, were like, I could only get new games if I finished the games that I had. So
Interesting.
I finished Ghosts and Goblins. That was a thing. And then Tiger Heli doesn't really end, but it does like sort of cycle over again. So I had to show my mom that it did that. So I did that with Tiger Heli, and then I was able to get like new games, which I got from.
Mom.
But then you see, but that's what started making me like kind of catch on and be wise about the whole thing. And that's why I used to get into like story games. So a lot of the games that I would get as a kid would be things like, the GI Joe game, for example, the Ninja Turtles, the Rockman titles, Batman. Shit, Batman was tough. Ikari Warriors was another one. Sorry, I'm just like digging into my memory banks here. Something called Totally Rad. All the games that actually had like, sequential stages that weren't just like recolors. They were actually, new stages with new enemies.
Like Tetris.
Castlevania.
Forever.
Yeah, Castlevania, TMNT. So I got great memories of the TMNT that Steve was showing off now. And actually, they've just done something called the Cowabunga Collection, which is actually a collection of all the retro TMNT games done up until the Mega Drive Super Nintendo era. And wow, like I'm dying to get my hands on it. I'm just waiting for it to arrive as a physical edition, and then I'll have it in my possession to play. Radical indeed. But another big game for me that was a huge influence was the Top Gun game. And you guys mentioned, one of you guys touched on the fact that we just got this game. We didn't have a manual or booklet or anything that came with it. And Top Gun, if you ever had Top Gun, well, you suffered for not having the manual, because landing your plane, most of the time you would
landed.
Yeah, and there's a good reason for
It was
not
a
there.
little complicated process.
Because when you were told to pull up and pull down and all that stuff, actually what it was asking you to do is decelerate. And the way you would do that is you'd have to, I think you have to press select and down or something like that, so that you can slow your actual plane down, and then you could land. And the first level they'd usually give you the first landing as a gimme, but it's usually the second landing that you'd like completely like smash.
Yeah, I
and hit,
don't think I ever went through 2 stages of this. I just have fun until I was like, okay, they're trying to ask me to land. That's the end of that.
And guys, I might be a little bit like lost on the details of exactly what it is that you have to do, but they do tell you exactly in the manual how to do it. So if you had the manual, you could land in Top Gun. It wasn't difficult. It was just all of us with the knockoffs that couldn't do it for shit. But yes, this was sometimes for my jet missions in GI Joe, because I'd be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna fly into a jet mission, so I switch on the NES quickly and do like and play a little bit of Top Gun, and then crash the plane and be like, okay, cool, carry on, go on mission now, So Top Gun was definitely a big sort of video game inspiration to how I played with my GI Joes, because I actually played the video game as part of playing with my GI Joes, so that was a good thing too. So that's pretty much it for me. I'm scared that if I mention any other games, we start changing generations of gaming. But I think it's safe to say, guys, I think Metal Gear Solid, we've all said it before on the show, I think Metal Gear Solid was a huge influence in how we view our GI Joes today as well.
Oh, for
Never
sure.
mind just how we played with them. And in a lot of ways, Metal Gear was kind of GI Joe, just distilled to basically one character with very interesting bosses and a very interesting scenario, but felt like a lot of the framework of GI Joe lived within Metal Gear. And obviously, yes, I'm very well aware of the Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear games on the NES, but
I don't think we ever got this. The first time I ever played that one, the ones on the NES, was with the special edition of Metal Gear Solid 3.
Subsistence.
Yes.
And it's a very good
never even
emulated
knew they
version.
existed before that.
Yeah, I had a Japanese version of Metal Gear, of the first Metal Gear. And I didn't know what the hell was cooking on that thing. And unfortunately, my games were stolen. It's quite sad. It's like about 2 months before I met David, they robbed our house. And they stole my Famicom knockoff and all my games. So, I would try to explain this game to David because, David's my new Asian friend. So clearly he can read everything that's Asian. Because I'm like a dumb 8-year-old, and you have to learn but you have to learn these things as well. You don't
silly little 8-year-old.
when you're a kid, you don't realize that there's different types of Asian languages. Because everything is Chinese. You know how it is. So I learned, and so that was one game that I never got to show David. And when I eventually did see Metal Gear, I was like, Dave, that one military game I kept telling you about? Yeah, that was the one. He's like, oh wow, that's so cool. And that was it. Speaking of Dave, I actually saw him today.
Oh, wonderful. Did you guys reminisce about the old times? Did he ask you, where did my tomahawk go, Paul?
No, that's not David's tomahawk. That's Michael Kerrigan's tomahawk. And if he listens to the show and he wants to call me up about it, I'd love to have that conversation. Because he came and picked it up later. Well, his mom did. Anyway.
You know what that feels like to me? It feels like when the bride kills Vernita Green and then her daughter comes into the room and she says if you still feel bitter about this, come see me in 10 years time or something like this. Paul, is this going to be a feud, a blood feud?
Not at all. No, Michael Kerrigan is cool. Besides, he owes me one or two. He lost quite a few of my GI Joes that I borrowed to him, so I think we're on equal footing.
Did I mention that's a Kill Bill reference?
Hell yeah, it is a Kill Bill reference. Everyone.
No, we got you, man.
So let's put a pin in our video game conversation. I think it's fair to say that video games had a profound influence on the way we played with G.I. Joe and continued to have a profound influence, and to this day still does. So drop down in the comments, let us know your influences in the pixels to play. But let's move the agenda to a little bit of latest breaking. Hiya toys, Snake Eyes.
Ooh. Very.
I don't know if
because
it's ooh for me. I'm not sure.
Well, I've seen some really good Hiya toys. We've actually at our shop we've stocked a bunch of the
Predators,
the Xenomorph and the Predators, and they're really fantastic. I mean, I haven't pulled the trigger on any of them yet, so I can't speak to the quality, and the durability of the figures. But they do look really good, and they definitely are to scale with at least with the modern era figures for sure. And I think they do complement the modern era figure line very well.
I've got a funny. Oh yeah, sorry, Rob. Yeah.
No, and yeah,
I got a funny feeling that even though they're going to be of a similar scale, I think the proportions are going to be kind of different. Like, I mean, duh, but I just think that if you put one of these next to a modern era Joe, I think you're going to see a few unique quirks to the higher toys. Like, I'm getting a feeling that you're going to get much wider shoulders. Well, you know what I mean? The much wider trapezoid area on the shoulders. um, like, that's just the vibe I'm getting from that. And I've got a feeling that the legs somehow are going to be skinnier when we see it, like, compared to a modern era figure. But I'm kind of curious about this line. I'm not gonna lie. Their pricing is very good, and that was and I only found that out because Steve actually told me what they're looking to retail at, and that is they're like $19, around there, $19
Yeah,
and
which
some
is
change.
99 cents.
And
Yeah, you don't
99
forget the
cents,
cents.
which is cool. You know, at least they're not trying to flog these things off to us at like $30 or $40 and like premium
No,
collectible blah blah blah
they're
bullshit.
basically making them. It's comparable to the other toys that they sell in their range, and they all come with a nice selection of accessories too. And with Snake Eyes, it looks like he comes with a fantastic array of weapons.
Yeah,
And
like
even a
he
base
definitely
for him to
comes with
stand
better
on.
weapons than his classified counterpart. I mean, the fact that he's got an
What?
Uzi for one is just that's, and his knife looks so much cooler than the classified knife. I mean, like this knife is a smaller scale and it looks better. It's crazy, you know.
That's higher toys for you, I think.
It's higher toys, although they still
mean-
made this like, and I think this is what I said to you guys when I first saw this was they definitely cribbed off the same homework. You know when you like you didn't do your homework and you quickly ask your buddy and you copy his homework before class
Finish this
starts.
for me quickly.
Higher Toys has totally done that because they made some of the same mistakes that the classified have. Like that effing sword on his back is still pointed the wrong way for it to be an effective weapon to draw. I mean, it's on his back. Okay, this is like suspend all disbelief, please. But like it's on his back. He's gonna pull the sword out. Now he's gonna pull the sword out like kind of backwards, and then he's got it. It's just stupid. It looks really
now that
dumb.
I'm
I
looking at
hate.
the picture properly, yeah. Like I said,
It's
it's kind of
irritating.
like it's facing. It's just, the way that they've pictured it is coming. The hilt is near his
Yeah.
right shoulder, but the way that the sword is fitted into the scabbard, actually, it should be pulled out from the other side. I
Correct.
think.
Yes, the
Oh, no,
beak
this
of
is
the beak of the sort of, because it is actually meant to be an eagle, is meant to be pointing upwards, not downwards. So
Hey,
well,
Paul, I've
hopefully
got to
this
say
is-
something. I've been abusing the microphone with my shitty voice, but you've been clicking your mouse, and now you're rubbing something. Please.
I'm not rubbing
please.
anything. I'm not touching
Yeah?
nothing, dude. That wasn't me at all.
It's touching.
I've
Who's
been
rubbing?
here the whole time. I've got nothing. I'm like floating. There's like nothing happening here. You shouldn't be picking up anything.
Rob,
I know
what
I
are you
clicked
rubbing?
earlier
It
because I
might
just
be me.
wanted to
What
make
it
sure
could
my.
be is that there's background noise in my area, and I am quite near our window. So what you could be picking up is people slamming windows or doors. So
just
I do
rubbing off.
apologize to our listeners, or
Rubbing one out.
They're rubbing off to us.
I was starting to worry that maybe my headset's mic was on or something and that my hair kept swishing on it, but I just double checked that.
Good otherwise, my dude.
His lustrous locks. But look, the sheath, too broad.
Oh
And
no, for sure, it looks really weird.
Snake Eyes is a tricky one. I mean, it's the obvious one to do right out the gate, but in terms of the proportions, yes, the legs do look skinny. But then again, Snake Eyes is supposed to be sleek and skin tight. Like if they went with a Destro or a, I don't know, more like someone in their OD greens, like a Grunt or a Stalker, who would have like more baggy pants, then we might see better leg proportions. So I'm gonna hold off judgment call till that. This is the tricky thing. It's it's designed to be 4-inch modern. Will it fit in with your existing 4-inch modern GI Joe action figures, or will this be its own thing? I'm gonna say the latter. These are your scaled down classifieds, and that is what they're meant to be. They're a niche little mini collection, a subset, if you will. They're not meant to mesh with what Hasbro's offering in the
With
4-inch
massive thigh
modern
gaps.
arena. Thigh gaps, there is some weirdness. Alternate hands, which modern 4-inch Hasbro offerings do not possess. And something
Which
that is
already
always
makes it
tricky
better
at the
than a
scale.
classified figure.
Take it or leave it. Look, I'm not ever mad about hands, bases, and blast effects. Give me weapon accessories. Give me like more stuff. Don't give me that shit. I'm not into that.
I'm all about bases, blast effects, and swappable hands.
Well,
This is right with
thankfully,
man.
exactly.
But-
That's why you guys are friends. You know,
Have you
Steven
guys
gets the
seen that the
accessories and you get the
Uzi-
blast effect.
Cody Scalf pointed out to me that the Uzi must be pretty flexy because in the one shot it's quite bent.
Yeah. Like this shot that we're looking at now. Yeah, definitely. Also, it's kind of refreshing to see the, the torso cut to make the figure bend forward and backwards on the classified is absent on this toy. And it really does improve the overall look of this figure. Like, in a big way. It puts new light on this guy for me, because there's one mistake that they haven't fixed, or there's two issues I have with the classified design that are still in this version as well. But at least that cut in the torso,
The
sorry, the
Arashikage
abs.
necktie.
Well, that's one of them that bugs me, but that's easy to fix. The thing that bugs me quite a bit is, you see how he's where his abs are, where he's what are those called? His oblique muscles. That's just above your hip bones. See how
His
like
gutters.
it curves into the torso, so it makes it look like his hips, like he's got a giant nappy. I hate that, and it's on the classified version as well, and freaking annoys the crap out of it. It looks so bad. And to my eye, a lot of people don't seem to have an issue with it. I take serious issue with it, and I hate that that's been translated into this figure. Although it does speak of the fact that it's got articulation there, so that's a pro. It's like a negative and a positive in the same breath. And then
If I'm
obviously
to
the
say
whole
something
scabbard
kind
thing.
though about proportion issues, you need to bear in mind this is a 4-inch figure. Like tasty photography like this fools the eye into believing that it's a larger thing than it is. So your scrutiny levels are dialed up to the same degree you'd have with a classified figure or even like a sideshow. But if you see one day in the first quarter of 2023, when we have these in hand, and you're scrutinizing it as a tiny little 4-inch guy with all that detail, I think we're going to give it a lot more rope. This might just
Agreed.
be the next
Oh no,
best thing
absolutely.
to Hasbro Modern Era. This might be quite cool, quite collectible, and very much for adults. Because I think higher toys might have a higher fragility threshold.
Yeah, or should we
No,
say a
I
lower
think so too.
fragility
That's why, as I said,
threshold?
they look a little bit more fragile because they are very thin. All of their figures feel thin to me. At least they look a little bit more. I mean, they're not fantastically portioned. You know, they are more realistically portioned. I feel, especially even the Predator figures. So it would be
Those are
interesting to kind
stunning.
of get someone in hand, one of these figures in hand, and actually just see what they really feel like. Like, can you play with them nicely, or are they literally just tiny little statues? You know, which I hope they aren't. I hope that they are actually proper toys.
But
If
more
it's-
rugged,
if-
yeah.
yeah, but more rugged. And if Snake Eyes is a success, hopefully they can expand their line, because they've been constantly doing new predators and new aliens, expanding not just alien xenomorphs, but the characters in their spacesuits. So they do
Robocop.
Robocop as well, Judge Dredd, an entire range of Judge Dredd characters. So they do introduce a
And
lot of
need we
characters.
mention the vehicles? Hiya
Mm.
Toys did that phenomenal APC for their Aliens
Yes.
line.
Oof.
So the possibilities with GI Joe suddenly become very exciting.
Very, very exciting. I think they can do a lot of really good stuff because they recognize what's cool about each brand. I think. I mean that was obviously something that people would want to have, and it worked. They sold it, and I think Hiya Toys. I'm very curious to see where they'll go with GI Joe as a brand.
Well, it's been speculated that since they did the classified Snake Eyes, they're going to stay in that aesthetic, which is effectively like a dead aesthetic at this point. because Hasbro Classified has gone very, like,
It's gone
true
back
to the
to
vintage.
retro. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has been speculated, and I'll full credit to Full Force for this speculation. But what if we started seeing classified designs that never made it into classified? Like the way they were going to take Storm Shadow
Storm Shadow.
originally
Yeah.
had that face mask and like a sleeve of arm tattoos. So maybe Hiya Toys is going to crib classified
Well,
even
they
into
could be
the
cribbing
unproduced
it,
camp.
or yeah, I mean, but that could be interesting. They're kind of like forging their own identity. I mean, yes, it's cribbing what Classified was doing originally, but then they're kind of sticking to
Or what they were going to do before they
Yeah.
course corrected and decided that everything that saw use in Operation Blackout is tainted. Leave that shit in the gutter.
Goodbye.
I like the sci-fi design from that though.
Oh, there's plenty of cool
Caught you.
designs. I bet you
Yeah.
like Baroness with purple hair too.
Hell
I
yeah.
don't. I love it. I love it. No sarcasm so much. It's dumb. Sorry, I just yeah.
But in terms of vehicles, I wonder if Hiya Toys could finally give us a Cobra transport helicopter. Has that got enough pull for them to try it?
Maybe they're looking for an excuse to do a cool helicopter figure, and that's just the one that a helicopter toy. Then that's just the one that seems to be, on their
They will
sites. They're like, hey,
totally-
cool, we're getting licensing money, so let's do this.
They will totally eat Hasbro's lunch if they can get the green light to do that. I'd love to see it happen. To be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of modern Hasbro these days. So the fact that GI Joe's license has been spread over all these alternate companies delights me no end.
But you make such a good point about it being a smaller figure, and like how we putting it under the same scrutiny we would with, like, for example, a classified figure. Although I'm willing to bet
Well,
that if
they
you took-
photograph the same.
yeah, well, that
Yeah.
yeah, but that's the thing, right? I'm willing to bet if you put a classified figure, because this is obviously smaller, so you need you need to zoom in a little bit more and do a few more things. I can tell you now that the classified figures, the paint jobs, don't hold up as well as this Hiya Toys figures paint job holds up, and that's something I will comment on with Hiya Toys. Is their actual production toys? Their paint jobs are very good, like very.
The word
very
they
good.
love to use is exquisite.
The exquisite
They do
paint
love
job.
that word.
All
On
the
the
bloody
production figures.
press releases say exquisite.
Exquisite. Most exquisite. But it's nice that we finally actually got to see what's coming from Hiya Toys instead of just, like a random promotional image. So
Oh, I'm
yeah, I'm
super
excited.
excited to see what they release next in
Hell
terms
yeah.
of promotional images.
Make it happen.
Nice to see a new player in town who is
Yeah.
Hell
doing
yeah.
articulation. Thank
Upset
you.
the established order. Yeah, and then on toy news, is there anything else that's exciting that GI Joe has announced for us to get excited about that maybe I've missed or that Rob's missed? Steve, have you seen anything else in the world?
No.
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 I thought that was leading towards like Paul suddenly revealing like
No.
Mattel is making G.I. Joe figures now for Ken and Barbie.
I've
Yeah, that would
talked
be
enough.
amazing.
I've tortured everyone enough with new releases. What I do want to shout out at this point is our good buddy Zazel Phoenix has just announced his GoFundMe for Joe Fest 2023. He is dying to meet his childhood hero, Sergeant Slaughter, and be put into that delightful Cobra Clutch. Though they're kind of got a bromance going, so I imagine that Cobra Clutch could turn into a full-on hug. I want to see it. I'm here for it. Link to his GoFundMe will this is hard enough when I don't. have a
Link to the
layered voice.
description in the GoFundMe link below.
Link to the GoFundMe will be in the description below. Please consider throwing him some dollars. It's a very achievable goal, and it would be very, very cool if we could send him on his way.
and it was magical for us. I mean, I would wish that for anybody. So
Absolutely. And
if
to
you guys,
actually meet his hero, I mean, I don't think there is a bigger Sergeant Slaughter hero fan in the entire world. And I
And the
think
fact
getting
that
these two guys
not only
together
are
would be
they
amazing.
like, not only is it a case of like fan and idol, but they do genuinely have a friendship now. So yeah, I just got to circle back to the fact that it would be so wonderful to see these two men in each other's company. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, if you want a feel good story for your 2023, please consider checking out his GoFundMe. It's currently
Do it
running.
now, do it now, fund him now. Oh
Speaking
yeah.
of new things, has anyone gotten anything new this week?
Gray hair.
Oh wow, great! That's quite
No,
nice.
I'm kidding, man.
Oh, you already
No,
have those.
nothing GI Joe related has come in. Nothing GI Joe or toy related has come into my life this week, and that's not for lack of trying. Obviously,
You've
no, I'm
definitely
kidding.
tried. I almost bought. I saw a He-Man. So the He-Man from the retro range at
Yes.
Toy Kingdom. I almost got him, but then I was like, I already own this He-Man. I own the
No,
original.
you should get him
Why
again.
do I
You
want to
this
spend-
one you can play with.
I can play with the original one. I mean, this one. What was cool though was seeing actually close up because I didn't look at these like, like scrutinize them. But it's cool that they have more articulation than the originals, but they look like the originals. So I was very close to pulling the trigger, but I was like, oh, what am I going to do with the He-Man?
You're
he's
gonna play with it,
punch
man. You're gonna go bish bosh all over your
He's
table and go
He's gonna
bish
punch
bosh.
my Spawn figure or something. I don't know.
You're gonna
Okay, so
run up
nothing
to
new
all
this
your
week.
run up to all of your Joes and be like, "Hey, dude." um, wow, Rob, that's super surprising.
I
Now,
was very close. I was so good because I was like, it's the only one in the shop. The only characters they had then was the weird green dragon vehicle which came with Adam, I think. And,
Wow, they still got that. Cool.
And here's the big Hordak. They had Hordak as well, as
Yeah,
well as
Hordak's
the
all over the place.
battle horse. They have the battle horse too.
Oh, Stridor. Very cool.
Yes. So I was very
Very
close,
cool.
but like that they had one He-Man. I was like, maybe.
Well,
maybe.
listen, if you do change your mind and that He-Man's disappeared, I can tell you now they're all over Joburg. I simply need to walk into either a Toy Zone, a Toy Kingdom, a Toys
it
R
has
Us,
to
or the
be-
Spa to pick up a
no,
He-Man
it
for
has
you.
to be it has to be a spur of the moment thing.
Okay.
I have to
No,
do
I
it-
get
have to
you.
do it
I get you.
myself,
But I can literally pick up a He-Man and a Skeletor from you from my local Spa. I shit you not.
Nah.
It's amazing.
We only we have one guy in Heberg here, and that's you.
Actually,
Then I think
like,
it's time for our delightful segment called Postbox the Pit, or Rob's Loving Scoopful. Do you have any listener responses that you want to
So-
get into this week, Rob?
Steve
I
sounds
have
so romantic. Sorry.
It does though, actually. Like when Steven gets sick, he gets really sexy.
He's like,
And-
Steve, Rob,
I have to admit,
Scoop's loving.
I'm battling here, but it wasn't so much the sickness as it was the fucking strepsils that my doctor wife gave to me. Now I have the voice of my ENT back in South Africa screaming on my shoulder saying, never take strepsils if you have a cold, because strepsils contain an anti-inflammatory, but also they are what's the word?
Mucoidal?
Anesthetic. They contain
Oh.
anesthetics.
Oh,
They put your voice to
interesting.
sleep. They numb your vocal folds. They numb the muscle
Yeah.
and makes up your voice. And I then prompted to have a 1 hour conversation with you, Paul. And it was during that conversation that's all of a sudden, hang on, my voice is
Started
very
dying.
tired.
That
It
was a cool
is
chat.
literally-
though.
Literally, my voice was doing gymnastics, trying to fight
Shame.
through this anesthetic, this coma that had been induced in my vocal folds. And that is why I have no voice. Or a very
Okay, then.
But I'm a
sexy voice.
scream.
Well, let me talk for a little bit then.
Please.
So, episode 264 is Operation Recall. We went through all of the fantastic figures that are coming out from the original creators, or some of them, bringing them back. And there was a really cool comment. It's just quite a long one, so I'm gonna probably paraphrase some of it, but I will read most of it from a user named Yellow Hell. So he starts out, cool, epic pickup. Carson has confirmed Supply Chain and Luna have now been unlocked via backer kit, going to make them bad is my canon because they're South African. Haha. I think what is especially exciting about Operation Recall is the old creators returning and injecting characterization back into O-Ring. This really is the best elements of the best era of Ara continued, and a new offshoot given the new storylines, and we'll see how it plays out. Then he kind of discusses how you could see as the toy line went along, the kind of the characterization became weaker, retreading of old characters and new decos, weak new characters, and it seemed to lack new direction to explore via new strong personalities. And he rounds up his comments by saying, if you look at Toy Connections video with Mark, Carson, and Ron, they go into their creation process and how every figure is hand sculpted. And this level of detail returning is crucial to high quality figures. So instead of designing via a computer and creating one thing perfectly in terms of dimensions, angles, etc., the handcrafting creation process results in a more customized and detailed design. I went through and looked at my old Joes, and sure enough, you can see the human touch in all of the little details. Nothing is quite modern, perfect, and is better for it. I would argue that something handcrafted is always better than something machine made. Really looking forward to where these characters end up in physical and story form. And I think that is a big thing. This is me talking now, end quote. Which makes these figures so cool and so new. Is that these are all new concepts, but they're created by veterans of the toy making process, guys who were there at the start, who created toys in the biggest era of when toys were made originally. And I absolutely agree with Yellow Hell that there are definitely a lot more details that you can see in earlier lines of the GI Joes versus later ones. Obviously, we absolutely adore all of the figures, and the retreads. I mean, having a different version of a character is fantastic. Obviously, not 100 versions of Snake Eyes, but I think definitely the earlier runs were definitely more cohesive, and more. Yeah, there's more of a human touch in there, and there's more of someone making it to fit together more than say later lines when they're kind of just going for the money. And I think definitely Operation Recall is a return to that kind of like golden era of toy making. What do you guys think?
Just the way that it's filtered through so many loving hands. Like these guys, this is their passion, man. It's a passion project from the contributors, people who offered up their ideas in the first place. Like these are like their quintessential like submissions to Hasbro, their dream projects, their what ifs. So already there's love at the very base level. And then it's going through all the old masters. Like each figure by the end of this process is going to be a very special achievement in and of itself, which is precisely why we did that exercise last week of like distilling your 1 or your 3 or your 7 if you're poor. Because each one of them, like I've said this before, but now that we have an unfettered amount of information as to how toys are produced and how much it costs to come up with tooling and how much design work goes into each facet, I've started calling each individual G.I. Joe action figure nothing short of a miracle.
You have
Like-
said this a few times, yeah.
Yeah, man. Even the more lamentable ones that are like your ice cream soldiers,
Wild boar.
like there are reasons why they wind up being more undesirable than others. But like at some level, someone was giving it their absolute all, and it was budgetary or meddling from the suits that wound up hurting the end product. Well, Operation Recall seems free of all of that bullshit,
Yeah, that's
It's
that's
very
what makes me
special.
very positive about it. It's like they don't have any of these like marketing kind of morons involved. When I say marketing, like Shane, marketing people are actually fine. It's just when they have a client that is a big company like Hasbro, then they become dumb. And then
There's less you can do. It's more of
yes,
the people above. I think it's
The
the same
process
like in
becomes
any
diluted,
industry,
it's
really. Like they have a
disgusting.
certain way of how they want to do things, and they don't necessarily see the positives in how other people might want to influence it and make it more special. And I think
Look,
Operation Recall is exceptionally special.
case in point, a lovely insight that Kirk Bozigian shared on an episode of Talking Joe was you've got to get the figure past the child, okay? So the card art has to be cool, the action figure has to be cool, but then you've got to get it past mom as well.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And so there has to be value. It has to be like, you could get this X-Man figure that comes with no accessories, or you could get this G.I. Joe that comes with all these guns attached to the tree, so it looks more plastic on the blister, and a spring-loaded thing, and an action feature, and a bio. Like, they had to make decisions based around getting it past not one, but two people.
Yep. And how many times did we have to try? And I'm sure you guys did this, but how many times did we sell figures to our parents? You know, we were like, "Hey, mom, check out this cool toy. Like, it's got all this, this, and this," and they'd be like, "Whatever." And then you would like go and grab another figure, but look at this other toy. It's so crap. This one's so much better, and it's only R5 more. You know,
And the inevitable question, but what can it do? And that, my
it'll
friends,
keep me quiet.
to answer that question, I give you action features. Whether it's pull back and go, or punching action, or multiple bio armor, all those gimmicks were our credit, our collateral to like play when we were asked, but what does it do? Oh, but mom, it lights up.
It has Play-Doh.
Has fisting action or whatever. Like, we'd have to sell the toy to our parents.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yes, that's why things went the way they did in the 90s, because it was a harder sell.
There's
And
so
Kirk-
much stuff to choose from.
Kirk knew what he had to do to make G.I. Joe competitive. He made the deal with the devil and moved it from being realistic model kits and accurate soldier men to being aliens and ninjas or with neon weapons on their trees.
And I still think he made a great call with that, honestly. I mean, on
best
this show,
call
we
was
love a
the-
lot of the
the-
90s stuff.
There were compromises. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
You know, I think there are definitely compromises made, but also there's a lot of stuff that that we enjoy and that kids did enjoy from that era. And we're definitely very happy to have our 90s toys. And we're definitely happy that we were influenced by fantastic video games that allowed us to kind of explore and give
He's
us
bringing it
ideas
back.
of
He's bringing it.
how to play with our toys, you know.
Yeah.
You
I love
didn't
that.
need action features. You just needed video games.
And now we got now the video games have become the toys, which is so weird. You know?
It's fantastic. It's
Like
absolutely amazing. It's
Minecraft and
amazing
Fortnite.
as our patrons. Thank you to every single person that contributes to the production of the show every single month, every single week. We appreciate everyone. You guys are amazing. Thank you for keeping the lights on as best you can. You know, against ESCOM trying to switch it off.
Can we tell people? Well, not can we? I'm going to tell our patrons, our Berg Force, about the new features. One of the newest features.
New features.
Yeah, there's a new feature.
Oh my goodness.
There's a new perk, so to speak, to being a Berg Force member. I sent out a message the other day asking for the members of the Berg Force to send me their birth dates so that we can celebrate your birthday in style by having you on the show as a guest. So
That sounds cool.
yeah. So what's going to happen is if your birthday is, you know, close or not close to the show, if it's your birthday, then we're going to check if you want to be on the show, and then you can be our guest, and you can participate in the topic or whatever. It's going to be crazy, and you can find all of that at Patreon.
Don't want to get
patreon.com.
involved. That's fine too.
Link
It's
is in the
completely
description
your
below for the low price of $3. My apologies,
Price.
that's me just not
One price.
articulating my r's properly. For
You're
the
not
low price of
roaring.
$3, yes. You can be part of the Berg Force.
Hans, next time. Fix your ferret brain.
Fix your ferret brain, Hans. But I got your mail, so shot, buddy. Yeah, so that's actually a pretty cool thing, and you know, it
I
allows
think
us
that's
to also. It also diversifies our roster. It brings in a different voice every now and then to the show. That is not somebody that is famous or in the industry or whatever. It's guys like you and me that just love playing with toys and listening to crazy guys like us talk about playing
And
with
watching
toys.
great movies, you know.
And watching great movies like Megafart. Force.
And on that gaseous note, thank you for joining us for another episode of GI Joburg 265, from Pixels to Playtime. I'm Robert, and I was joined by
Paul, who is a Lego Transformers Optimus Prime survivor. No, I didn't buy it. I said no. I'm still here to tell the tale. And I was joined by
Nails on a chalkboard, Stephen. Hopefully, I'll
Once
be fine
was
for
a
us next week.
man.
maybe he'll be better next week, guys. Hopefully.
Men may rule, but snakes never. Thanks for joining us. See you next week. Stay safe
Bye,
out there,
everybody.
guys.
Stay alive.
Bye.
You got this.
Bye-bye, 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 bye-bye.